So this one is more for parents, mostly women, because men, I know how uncomfortable, at least it was with my husband, talking to my daughter about anything sexual related, anything in that department. Thinking she was growing at all was not okay. I just got a call from my daughter. She is now 21. And I've adopted many of her friends as my daughters as well. But she was like, what are you doing? And I was like, oh, I'm doing some videos for like dating and stuff and blah, blah, blah. And she was laughing at me. And I was like, oh my gosh, I need to interview you, because parents, what do you feel okay talking about with your kids? I promised myself that I would not be that parent that my daughter couldn't come to. Couldn't ask me before she was asking friends. Couldn't ask me before she Googled it. So somehow my house became the house of everyone, anyone of her friends could come over and ask questions, could come over and seek guidance, be themselves. I remember the first question she asked me, she was probably like 3 or 4, and it was, what are lesbians? And I remember saying, that's when 2 women love each other. We go into way too much information, and that's what makes it uncomfortable. My mom, I remember we were at a camping place and we were sitting on a picnic table, and she was pointing and like at a woman's diagram of her ovaries, uterus, and explaining the scientific facts about it. That is not what teenagers need. That is not what kids need. When they ask a question, they need to not feel the shame that we have attached to it. If you have some attached to it, which is a trigger, which is something you should probably dig into to see why, you need to just be able to answer the question. If they have more questions, they will ask them. But we need to be that safe place that they can go, that is not Google and is not uneducated friends. There were so many times where my daughter would drag people home. One time it was about getting pregnant on a toilet seat. Please tell this girl that she cannot get pregnant on a toilet seat. And you would be amazed when you open up this line of communication with your kids. 1, you're going to see where your shame is attached. 2, you're going to see what you don't even know the answers to. 3, you're going to find out what they're all talking about at really, really young ages that you were not even aware of. Like, I remember when I found out what docking was. Docking is a thing here in Utah. Docking. That means girls allow a guy to insert, but they don't move. Don't move. Which means in their heads, they can't get pregnant, they're not having sex, and why are they doing it? Oh, to fulfill the guy's need. To not be judged, for them having boundaries, for not being judged. Because does docking do anything for a woman? No. So, docking in 7th, 8th grade was a thing. Anal sex in Utah was a thing so that they didn't lose their virginity. What are you okay talking to your kids about? What are you having conversations with them about? Did you start at such a young age that they don't even think twice about asking you questions? Shit comes up on TV, commercials, all of that. I think it was freaking Transformers when they were talking about masturbation, and my daughter asked, what's masturbation? And I remember looking at my husband and saying, you get this one. And he started going into all sorts, and my daughter was like, whoa. And I was like, that's when somebody has sex with themselves. Simple. answers to simple questions. We make it complicated because our parents made it complicated. We make it complicated because we don't talk about it. It is open communication in my household at all times. Anyone who comes into my house knows they can ask anything, they can say anything. There's no judge, there's no shame, there is no anything. Is that how your house is? Or is your house one of those houses where the kids would come to my house to feel seen, to feel loved, to feel heard? Do you know how many would come to my house that were worried that they were lesbians or gay or whatever, and knew that their family would not even be able to see them, let alone love them anymore and have a conversation with them? Are we really putting that on the children that already have so much burden on them? Do they really think because you judge others, because that's what they're going off of? If you're not talking to them about it, they're going off of how you judge everyone else. What you say, what they hear you say to friends, what you say to anybody, or what you don't say, and they are assuming. If you're not talking to them, who is? Who's teaching them? Because I guarantee you, the conversations that I started getting at 4th and 5th and 6th grade shocked me. If you're waiting until you think they're ready, they already know more than you do by then. I suggest you probably leave it as a normal conversation. Anything that comes up, you answer with no shame, no judgment on yourself, and you pay attention to what triggers you that you probably should work through. I think you should probably talk to your daughters about boundaries, about self-worth, about self-love, and all of the things that hopefully you are venturing into to learn for yourself. And not being shameful and saying, I am learning it now, if you are. Because if they think you're perfect, like my mom didn't want to tell me any of her problems, issues, shameful pieces. So I assumed she was perfect. If I was striving for perfection, I wasn't going and talking to her about it. Because then that meant I wasn't perfect. And that she wouldn't understand me. If you share where you fell, where you learned, where you sucked and had to learn the hard way, do you think you might save your daughters? Or your boys? Helping them understand what women are going through, what girls go through, what painful moments we have, what pains that we have to go through and understand what our body's doing, all of that. If they don't know where we fell and got up and what we learned from it, we aren't teaching them better than we learned. We're not saving them from falling. We're helping them get there because we have shame attached to that in us. And we mirror it onto our children. I know that with me being 15 and pregnant, one of my biggest things that I preached to my daughter from like day one, and my husband had to be okay with it, was she was not getting pregnant, period. Like that was, I don't care if I have to tell her the birth control or vitamins, because I was told abstinence and it was against the religion to be on birth control when I even went and asked and was vulnerable for it. So I remember when she was like, I think she was 13, and the conversations were shifting and her friends were all having sex, and it was a whole thing. So it was my choice when I put her on that. And my rule was she wasn't allowed to be on a pill that she had to remember to take every day because she was a child and didn't know the responsibility attached to that. So she had to do the shot. What I didn't realize was what I taught her, she started teaching other girls. When my daughter had a car, my daughter was taking a carload every time to go get a shot. When she found out people were having sex and they weren't protecting themselves, she would stand up for them and teach them. That was anything I ever expected, but that means that parents weren't teaching the girls. They were doing it behind your backs anyways. So why not pretend? Why are we pretending that it's not happening? That's the thing that I refused to do, because I knew what I was doing. I knew what I was hiding from my parents. So I wanted the house that was okay to talk about anything, and that was okay for her to protect all of her friends that were making stupid decisions, that were having sex thinking it was love because they weren't feeling unconditional love at home. They weren't feeling seen at home. She would bring them home, sit them on the couch, and like, this one is going to go do this and that and blah, 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 blah. And I know there's more to it. Mom, talk to her. I would rather that, and they felt like they had somewhere to go, than nowhere. These kids need to feel seen, need to not be lost and attached in our shame that we're working through. Still, they need to know where we fell down and where we got back up and what we learned from it. They need to know our mistakes. If you can't talk to your kids about it, do you think you still might have shame and shit attached to it? Do you think you still have that hope that maybe your child is different and they are not doing any of it? And even if they aren't, do you think they might need to know when it's coming at them? I don't know. I just think we need to stop hiding pieces of ourselves. We need to stop pretending like we don't have shit that we need to work on. Stop pretending like we're perfect to our kids. Stop pretending like you're perfect to your friends or family or anyone else. Be your perfectly imperfect self and show your kids it's okay to do that too. It's okay to fall down. It's okay to screw up. It's okay to talk about it, and it's okay to ask for help. If we're not teaching them that, how do they learn that? They're not watching it. Otherwise, it would be embedded in them, and you wouldn't have a problem talking about it. But if you're totally uncomfortable talking about it, you might want to work on that before you talk to the kids. Just saying. Because otherwise you make them totally uncomfortable, like my mom with the pointer stick and the diagrams. Yep. My mom still never knows what's going to come out of my mouth and has learned that, like, open communication in my house and we do not shame. So if you are having issues and internal struggles, you should probably vacate the premises because we are not shaming someone for talking about something. What are you shaming? What do you still need to work on that could possibly be influencing your teenagers or even younger? Especially if they're watching you date, especially if they're watching you interact with people not authentically and they know your struggles or have seen them. They are taking that as you shaming it. Speak your truth to our kids, to your friends, to yourself. It's the only way we teach them. Just a thought that came up when I was laughing with my daughter. Told her I was going to interview her, and she laughed, but figured that a parent conversation is actually needed because I forget what happened when she was a teenager and what we had to go through and what my household was. And how many kids I took in that were abandoned by their parents. That's pretty sad to me. because we're not teaching them unconditional love if we have conditions attached to all of it, are we? Which means they have never known unconditional love and they will start seeking it in other avenues. That's scary. So, don't have conditions attached to your love. We all are perfectly imperfect and it's okay. So show them it is. By your failures and the lessons you've learned. Just a thought.